Okay, moving on to the education and our
Operations and transportation.
operations. Oh, we're gonna start with operations, right? What does it show over here? Where's our agenda? Okay. Mr.
Shields is
so
on.
Mr. Shields is on, but
All right, thank you, Mr. President. This meeting is called to order at 4:19 PM. Roll call, all board members are present this evening or this afternoon. Is there any public participation for the Operations Committee? Hearing none, we'll go through several items. On the agenda this evening are several summer, early fall projects for the school district. The first one that's attached there under facilities is the Steckel Elementary IP phone conversion. Steckel Elementary is the only building on campus left with the old analog phones. So we worked with Cisco and we have two proposals there, a software upgrade and a replacement of all the phones at Steckel that will be IP-based. This will allow us many advantages. One of them is to gather our email electronically where you don't have to be present at the phone across campus. Are there any questions about the Steckel IP phone proposal? All right, hearing none, we'll go to the next one. The next one is the Lutron software upgrade and maintenance agreement. This is for Zephyr Elementary. Lutron currently controls all of our lighting with the software package and low voltage lighting. We would like to upgrade that, or at this point, we need to upgrade it. It's old software, and we really can't control the lighting there. Mr. Bankos is here if there are any questions regarding this project. Nope, hearing none, we'll move on to the next one. Facilities Plan Committee report, school board resolution. A draft resolution is attached there. We would like to forward this to the board for board approval on June 27th. This has to do with space used by the IU here on the Whitehall-Coplay campus, and Mrs. Clary is here to answer any questions you may have about that. All right, the last item on the facilities part of the agenda is the Township Library LED replacement project. As you're aware, we own the Township Library building here on campus. It's leased, we lease it to the township for the library purposes, but we are responsible for the upkeep and maintenance of much of that building. We want to keep it in good shape. This proposal has converting, there's 426 lighting fixtures in the public part of the library. We are looking to convert those to LED. They would swap out 2 bulbs for 1 in there, and the cost savings would be realized as the years go on, because LED lighting is much less expensive as traditional lighting. Speaking with some of the board members on the Township Library, they have agreed to bear half the cost of this conversion. So we'd like to push this forward for approval on the June 27th board meeting.
It's fine. The only comment I'll make on that is it's good that we're doing that, because if we ever go into a solar option, one of the first things they'll tell us to do is to change everything to energy efficient lighting first and then get our usage after that. So it makes sense to me.
Any other questions regarding that project? All right. If you go down to the contractual items, we have 2 items on the agenda. First one is the network management agreement with Carbon Lehigh Intermediate Unit. This is for the management, day-to-day management and large-scale projects of our technology department with a IU representative here on campus 2.5 days a week for the 22-23 school year. We currently have this arrangement this year. This is a continuation of that agreement.
thank you.
All right, there's, any questions on that? The last item is the Provision Transportation Camera Proposal. Mr. Bowder's here if you have any questions regarding this. As you're aware, we used grant money to buy new buses and some vans, which are scheduled to be delivered here. One delivery in early fall, one later in the fall. We have cameras on all our buses. We currently have several iterations of those cameras and software on those buses. So since we have to equip the new buses coming in with cameras, we decided to go out and look, how can we improve the quality and the efficiency of all of our cameras? And Provision was able to give us this quote. This would fit all of our current buses and the new ones arriving with one system, one set of cameras. There'd be 4 cameras interior on the large buses. The nice thing about this proposal, it also has cameras on the sidearm, so it would catch traffic that runs the stop sign when buses are stopped. And again, Mr. Bowder's here, he did a nice job securing this. If you have any questions about our current camera system or what we're proposing. No? Hearing
So
none?
I'm sorry, who monitors all of that?
Well, it's basically, if there's an issue, then.
You can go back.
Yeah. So the system that we have now is about 65 to 70% effective. The system we have now is almost obsolete.
Okay.
The company's down to, I think, 1 employee, so to get any kind of tech support is nearly impossible. And that's when when Steve had come up to be introduced to the whole system, the principals don't like it, it's hard to get on the stuff, so now they would actually be able to go through a class and be able to get stuff. If they need this from this time, they could do that from their desk. They
Right,
don't
from
even
their
really
own
need to
building.
be up at the transportation garage to do
Okay.
that,
So it's one system,
yes.
state-of-the-art software, state-of-the-art cameras, 100% coverage within the buses.
Yep.
One place for the principals to go as opposed to multiple software systems. But the biggest, in my opinion, one of the biggest things that's part of this proposal is the sidearm cameras that would help
Yeah.
with traffic that runs the red
And I
lights.
think the one thing that Steve, I don't know if he said it or not, that this proposal has a camera pointing out the windshield as well, which is good for when people say that we hit them and we did this and we did that, so we run into that.
Does it-
every time, so.
Does it also record voice?
Yes,
Okay.
yep.
And just to be clear, Mr. Sire, this would be coming out of the now approved technology budget for the 22-23 school year.
That is correct, Dr.
Okay, it's
Steckel.
not additional money.
No. All right, I'm gonna recommend then we move all these items forward to June 27th board meeting. Are there any other questions? All right. This meeting can conclude at 4:25 PM.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Williams?
All right, good
Our
afternoon, everyone.
financial-
We'll call the Finance Committee meeting to order at 4:26 PM. All right. Roll call, all board members are present. We'll turn it over to our feelers business manager, Mr. Millay.
Public participation, is there any? No public participation. Okay, good evening. Tonight, we're going to review the 2022-23 insurance renewal. We have Pete Dooley, our insurance broker. Pete's been the broker for the district, Myers-Benner, since the 80s, I believe, we talked about today. So he's going to review. Attached to the agenda is a one-page sheet with the results, the quotations we received for our insurance.
Okay. Good afternoon. As Mike says, I'm Pete Dooley, Myers-Benner. Been working with Whitehall-Coplay in the insurance since 1988, 89. What you have is the marketing, and every year we go out to the markets and find out coverages and premiums broken out here. We have package, work comp, umbrella, school board legal, and cyber liability. You're going to see what we developed premium-wise. And there are, whereas workers' compensation is pretty straightforward. You rely on the services that are provided by the comp carrier, but the premiums are, you cover medical and you cover lost wages. It's pretty straightforward. The package, the auto, the umbrella, and the school board legal, and the cyber are a little bit more difficult, not difficult, but nuanced in the coverages they provide. Currently, you're with Liberty Mutual and have been for probably about the last 10 years. You'll see the three big markets here are Liberty, CM Regent, which used to be the old PSBA program, and they sold it to Church Mutual, and that's the CM, and then Utica Mutual. They're the three big players in the state of Pennsylvania for school districts. You will see that the CM Regent is a good company. They have some things in there that I feel aren't as advantageous. They have a deductible on the school board that after you pay the deductible, every bill that comes in after that the district, it's an 80-20 split. So the district pays 20% and they pick up the 80%. So they don't have choice of counsel. They have a couple other things. The big one I see that they don't have is replacement cost on buses that are 10 years or newer. And if you guys remember, right pre-pandemic, another very large school district in the area lost its bus garage with 25 buses in the garage and then 25 buses parked next to the garage. I happen to be on that one too. And this endorsement, which costs about $3,000, paid well over six figures to replace those vehicles. That was a big deal for them. Otherwise, they would have gotten ACV on some of those and had to put out some money. So they didn't put out anything on that, which was very good. So CM Region doesn't offer that. Liberty does, and Utica does. The bottom line is, over last year's premium, if we include Liberty on everything and AmTrust on the workers' compensation with Chubb on the cyber liability, you're $15,000 less than you were last year, overall cost-wise. Now, you might say, well, what about Utica? Good company. I have some districts with them, good company, but they have some things that you need to know about and to make the decision. One thing, you can't pick or choose. If you could look and say, well, can't we do Utica on this, on the umbrella? Can't we put CM Region, and can't we put Liberty on the school board legal? If you go Liberty, or if you go Utica, or if you go CM Region, you got to go to them, all those coverages. It's a package. Liberty Mutual, for due process claims, which is basically special education claims, has a $500,000 limit. Utica has a $100,000 limit. Now, they allow you 3 claims during the policy term of $100,000 each. But if you don't use that, you don't get to carry it over to the next claim. You do $100,000 for one claim, that goes away. You got another claim, $100,000. You got another claim, $100,000. Then you got to rebuy your limit. Liberty doesn't have that. They have a $500,000, and that's the cap, but you get to use that over the course. So if you pay $10,000 out for one, $20,000 out for another, $50,000 out for another, it just starts dropping the limit, but it's not capped at that 100,000. So I see that as a valuable thing. The other thing I see as valuable, and whether this continues going on in the future is, and considering what we just went through with this pandemic, Liberty Mutual does not have an exclusion for communicable disease or pandemic on their umbrella. CM Region does have that exclusion, and Utica, whereas they don't have a total exclusion, they'll only go to an additional $1 million on the umbrella, and once that $1 million is tapped, they're done. So Liberty goes all the way up through the umbrella to the total limit of the umbrella. Other things that might be important I see, Liberty has paved surfaces, natural turf, underground pipes, flues and drains, and fiber optic cables as part of the definition of building. So you get the full building limit for all that. So if you have a sinkhole in the paved surfaces, which we've had several times, you get the full $187 million for that to repair it. For that, Utica has $10,000 for underground flues, drains, pipes, and fiber optics. So there's a big difference on that one. And CM Region doesn't have anything for that. So we negotiated the definition of building to include the paved surfaces and natural turfs. So the baseball fields, the football fields, I think we are no longer natural turf up there, but that's all considered part of the building, whereas in Utica it would not be. They're not going to include that. So if something sinkhole opens up in that, that's on you, not on them. So, any questions for me on this? Now, you will see down in cyber liability, we're working Chubb is the PSBA-sponsored program for cyber liability. It is the Cadillac, it's the program you want to be with for schools. Utica is much cheaper. The limit is lower, and it doesn't give, you have to chip away as you pay out, that overall limit gets chipped away. Whereas Chubb's product, you have one limit for ransomware, another limit for notification, another limit for forensic science to find out how it happened. So they are their own limits. Whereas with Utica, much cheaper, but that limit gets chipped away. Like their extortion limit is 250,000. So you take 250, now you have 750. That's not the case with Chubb. Their limit stands and is much higher than that. So FYI, I don't want to go into too much because I don't want to expose the district. But I don't know if you have any questions for me. If you do, specific questions, you can get to Mike and he can get, and I can get back to you on those. But that's the lay of the land for insurance. So we technically are down about 15,000 over last year.
What was the building, the sinkhole, the fiber optics, what is Liberty Mutual cover? What's their cap?
187 million. They consider that part of the building limit. We negotiated that. Also, what's negotiated, and I didn't spell it out, but is playground equipment, lighting, standalone retaining walls, lighting fixtures, signs that aren't attached to the building. That's all we negotiated to be a part of the building limit. Typically, it's not. There's a sub-limit. We threw it in. We asked Liberty to do it, and they did that for us. So overall, I think it's a very strong product. Again, all three very good companies, but I think Liberty has some things that will benefit you. My big concern is really on the school board legal for the due process claims. We just went through a pandemic. These young kids, I don't know what's going to come about from a standpoint of, hey, they weren't keeping up, they weren't educated correctly, something like that along the lines, and you have now 500,000 to give that rather than 100,000 cap. And it's just, I think it's a stronger product at this stage of the game, given the unknown. Any questions for me?
Okay, Pete, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to lunch prices. There will be no increase to the prices for the 22-23 school year. We're keeping those the same. There may be changes to the a la carte price list, so we'll be bringing that to the June board meeting with the, just to confirm the prices. The actual prices were not approved, or last were approved in 2021 because all meals were free for the last school year. The a la carte prices, we have to get our pricing in from our vendors to price some of that, so we'll be doing that this week. Any question on lunch prices? Portnoy Law Associates, the contract that was originally signed was back in 2002. There have been some changes to the collection law, and Portnoy has come back to us to update their contracts and resolutions, appointing them as the tax collector for our real estate taxes. There's a new, get the correct terminology here, model validation notice that needs to go out prior to the notice that we normally send out to the taxpayers. It's actually cheaper if the taxpayer calls and starts the process with them and a payment schedule. It's actually cheaper than the prior year. The rates have increased on their other services, and just so everyone knows, what happens is we pay $35 as a school district to mail out all of the taxes. Once the money is collected, if you set up a payment plan with them, you pay that $35 plus the amount that was owed in penalty. If you ignore their notices, then they ramp up to and including, the sale of the property. Majority are settled way prior to that and worked out with Portnoy on a payment plan. I have to say with Portnoy, I don't get many calls. They are very professional. They're a law firm that's well-respected. And they are increasing some of their fees. As I said, the last time the fee schedule was approved was 2002. Any questions? Okay. 2022-23 student accident insurance. The proposal is there, and I apologize, I do not know what we paid last year, but I will get you that. After the meeting, I believe it's right around the $87,780. What this covers is any student who is injured in interscholastic sports, football, band, cheerleading, intramurals, gym classes, special activities, off-season conditioning, and weight training is covered by this policy. The policy pays the first $100, no matter if you have insurance or not. The parents or other insurance kicks in after that, and then this policy would pay anything not covered by the parents' insurance. And it is tied in with the $25,000 deductible, and then there's a catastrophic that takes it up to $1 million, and then this coordinates with the PIAA catastrophic insurance if the injury is that bad that it reaches those limits. Any questions on student accident? Okay, review the annual recurring. I have those listed in the agenda. Every June, we come back with review the bonds and set the bond amounts for the treasurer and secretary, authorize the business manager to make investments based on the school code, authorize for budget transfers to finalize this current school year 21-22, and then designate the depositories for district funds, pay the remaining balances. So this is after, we will bring you the check register at the next, at the June meeting as we normally do, but any bills that come in that are for the current year, we will pay on June 30, and then issue the checks and bring that back to you for confirmation in the July meeting. If there's anything questionable, we wouldn't approve that, but it's the everyday bills that we're paying. Okay, authorized fund balance appropriation. This is approved every year where we set the committed fund balance as 7.5% of the budget that was just approved. And then approve the appointment of the delinquent tax collectors, Portnoy for real estate and G.H. Harris for per capita tax. I believe that's it. Any questions on the recurring June agenda items? Okay, capital reserve transfer. The school code permits the transfer of money, leftover funds in a budget to be transferred to the capital reserve fund to be used for capital projects. Now, the only items that can be purchased are construction projects, buses, and infrastructure fees. So when the money's transferred there, some of the projects that were approved, we can pay out of that capital reserve fund. Makes it a little cleaner if the payments are done in 1 year and not the next. And we have that set aside for if there are any other contingencies with capital projects. We did have the savings this year of special ed of approximately $1.2 million. The school buses are not coming in. We had $600,000, so we should have the $1 million. Be proofing that before we come. I will be bringing this either in the June or July meeting for approval, and then we can transfer that money over to the capital reserve.
So the strategy here, board members, is to continue to try to identify opportunities where potentially this capital reserve fund can keep us up to speed with our 5- and 10-year capital improvement plan without really impacting the general fund budget during any given year. Obviously, things are going to come up. We have this reserved for emergencies, but we also have this reserved to spend money now to avoid greater expenses in the future. So we have, quite a few capital improvement projects slotted for next school year, whether it be exterior projects, HVAC projects, various things in our kitchens, but really staying ahead of our facilities here and having the leeway with this reserve is going to make those things possible.
That is all I have. Any questions? Okay, we'll close it at 4:44.
Okay.
Thank you. In lieu of Mrs. Gallagher not being here, Mr. Schiffer?
Sure. Education Committee meeting is called to order at 4:44. As we know, all board members, with the exception of Mrs. Gogler, are here. Is there any public participation? Seeing none, we'll move into the agenda. Policy revisions, first reading. These are the 100-level policies that have been vetted and returned to us through PSBA and have also been reviewed through the Policy Committee, with the exception of the very last, which is 822, which is an AD. There's been some language change to that policy. You'll see as part of the Agenda 2, deletions, 120 Human Development Program, 129 Instrumental Music, which are no longer applicable. Moving along, there is a CIS, Communities and Schools Renewal Contract. That is a renewal for our position at the middle school. And you see that that runs through July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2024. Next up is the Whitehall-Coplay School District 3-year equity plan, and I will call Mrs. Barrios to the floor.
If I can. Hello? Yeah. Good afternoon, board members, faculty, staff, administration of the Whitehall-Coplay School District. Thank you for having me today presenting the equity plan for the following 3 years. It has been an honor for my first year to be here at the Whitehall-Coplay School District, trying to promote equity in the district and collaborating with different stakeholders to support the plan moving forward. Before I present the 3-year plan, I'd like to talk with you about the initiative at the beginning of the school year, which included the 3 pillars that we will mention later on as well. One of them being trauma-informed care, social emotional learning, and culturally responsive instruction. In order for us to complete the equity audit that was completed throughout the year, it was important for us to have a focus in mind, and this entails a school culture, relationship building, community connections, and the curriculum. In terms of the equity audit, I have included in the attachments for your review the extensive document that was completed throughout the school year. And this document touches upon different areas: human resources, teaching and learning, staff, students, parents, and the community. We have collaborated with everyone in the school district, different stakeholders, like I mentioned before, and gathering quantitative and qualitative data to be able to create a 3-year plan. In doing so, I had Mr. Tice, who was working in conjunction and collaborating throughout this process, because he was doing his internship with me and was an instrumental key in completing and gathering this data and supporting with the equity audit. So he'll speak about the highlights of the audit.
Thank you, Mrs. Barrios. Thank you, everyone, for having me here today. Let me speak. I'm just going to go through, this is basically a very much a distilled version of our equity audit, which I think everyone has access to. So the first point over here on the left, if you're looking at one of the screens here, we're looking at special education services for students. You can see that what we found through the equity audit was that the proportions of student groups identified as requiring special education services for the most part mirrored the greater demographics of the school, with a few outliers, including an overrepresentation of Hispanic Latinx students needing or requiring special education services, and a slight underrepresentation of white students, followed by Asian American students requiring special education services. Next, looking at our population growth, we saw that our EL, our English language learner population, is showing the most rapid growth, almost a 200% increase over the past 6 years, as well as our Hispanic Latinx students. So we saw that that is also one of our fastest growing populations. And yet, as you're going to find out, the Hispanic Latinx students remain underrepresented in much of our higher level courses and overrepresented in our district's discipline data. So next, we're going to look at our course rollout. So what students are in which courses? Again, what we found is that in our higher level courses, that's our AP and honors level courses, we have an overrepresentation of our white population, our white student population, and our Asian student population. We also found that those two student subpopulations are underrepresented in the lowest level courses, which we call our core here at the high school. And in the core courses, we saw a major overrepresentation of our Hispanic Latinx students. CP, which is sort of our middle of the road course, that's our college prep course, the CP enrollment levels pretty much mirrored the other demographics of the district. And if we look at student achievement, what we found is that if we look at our PVOS data, our state assessment data, the available data showed that our Hispanic Latinx students showed the lowest overall growth when we averaged them across grades and assessments. That's followed closely by students with IEPs, and students who are economically disadvantaged also showed markedly lower growth outcomes when compared to their peers. When we're looking at staff supervision, staff are constantly being evaluated through walkthroughs, formal and informal observations, and provided with feedback from supervisors. However, what the district is currently working towards is involving professional development for developing and increasing our student-teacher relationships. The district is also providing academic and SEL, or social emotional learning, professional development, and the district is also working on introducing programs that are seeking to include culturally responsive education. Finally, we're looking at culture and climate here on the right. Staff opinions on culture and climate are somewhat divided. As you can see, some staff reported feeling that they are academically and social emotionally supported, and others disagreed with those sentiments. The PAYS data, which is the Pennsylvania Youth Survey data, indicated that about 30% of students in grades 6, 8, 10, and 12 do not feel a sense of belonging, and almost 50% of students reported thoughts of depression. So those are just some of the metrics that stood out as far as our equity audit and kind of guided the 3-year plan.
Thank you, Mr. Tice. Just let us know if you have any questions about the audit as you are able to review the document. Like he's mentioned, this is just the highlights of that equity audit. It took us some informal and formal meetings with different and various stakeholders. So based on those results, we had created an equity framework that is committed to support the educational community that is inclusive, diverse, and equitable through acknowledgement, action, and vigilance. And in doing so, by looking at this audit, I was able to identify 3 areas of focus for the district. One of them being the student discipline, SEL, and mental health support. It's important that we review the student code of conduct in light of the district's commitment to excellence of equity. All students will receive internal and community-based SEL, meaning social emotional learning and trauma-informed care, to align that Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 interventions for the students. In supporting the students, we also supporting the staff with the professional development. The second area of focus is family and staff cultural sensitivity engagement. So based again to the results from the audit, we were able to look at reviewing practices and procedures that are already in place that welcome new families, welcome students, and focuses on those strategies, especially with the minority and economically disadvantaged students that are the reports show that are in the lowest classes and not feeling belonging to the school district. So we're looking at those transitional years, whether students are coming to kindergarten, moving from 5th to the 6th grade, moving from 8th to 9th, and as well as after they graduate, moving to post-secondary education. And the last area of focus will be the student academic and enrichment opportunities. The students will be able to participate, and we at the district level will review academic practices and procedures in place that allow them and support, again, the minority and economically disadvantaged students' success in more challenging and rigorous coursework, after school, enrichment, athletics, and everything that involves the school district. So we're looking at the planning throughout the 3 years. And what we're looking at also here in this slide is the alignment K through 12. The first area of student discipline, SEL, and mental health supports speak to the professional development that the staff will receive K through 12 in the areas of trauma-informed care and social-emotional learning. This professional development should support the teams established to support the students. The teams that are currently available for all our students are the Whitehall Intervention Team, the Child Study, the Student Assistance Program, and they collect data to look into alignment for Tier 1, 2, and 3 mental health and SEL strategies and supports. So exploring this process and integrating behavior into the MTSS systems will include the academics and behavior for K through 12. And then we are focusing on the first year at the middle school and high school level to provide supports in relationship building. Because again, the data indicates that the students need that extra support. Middle school has a mentor mandate initiative, and also the high school will begin with the track time, and the high school will include skills infusing relationship focused students entering the 9th grade. So our students that just completed the middle school, they are acquainted with the system, and we will begin year 1 with the 9th graders. We'll review the code of conduct to ensure that all these practices and the professional development and the supports for the kids are in alignment with the SEL and trauma-informed care language. Then moving to year 2, we are continuing providing professional development and beginning to adopt this process of integrating the behavior in the MTSS process that allows, again, more supports for the students. And at the second year, now the entire high school will be able to utilize this track time for relation-focused activities. And again, second year, we'll begin with the K through 5 elementary. We'll explore how that transitions from the middle, high school, and the earlier grades. By the third year, we should see an alignment K through 12 in the areas of trauma-informed care and social-emotional learning. This is a team effort, so we, along my side, I'm working together with the principals, with the teams, with everyone in the school district, special education department, to be able to carry on these initiatives in the area of student discipline, SEL, and mental health supports. With the second area of focus, family cultural sensitivity and engagement, we're looking at those key elements of transitioning years. So the first year, we focus on kindergarten. We started meeting already with Michelle at the registrar office. We are looking into reviewing this registration process and welcoming procedures that provide supports for new families, for new kids that are entering the kindergarten level. And then we're looking at reviewing those transitional years for kids that are in 5th grade, 8th grade, and 12th grade. See where can we support them to provide them with a lot of supports and resources that they will need to move forward with their transition years. Like I said, at the middle school level, we have an ambassador program, and the students are taking the initiative. They will be leading the initiative that includes other students to it. So the new enrollment students at any point throughout the year will be able to tour the building and hear from their peers and how things are getting done in their building. And this is happening K through 8, the first year. And at the same time, we will continue providing support to the staff in the professional development in the culturally responsive instruction area, and exploring additional opportunities for family engagement and involvement in all schools. This year, we have done the family night, and we continue to explore new opportunities for the parents to feel a sense of belonging at the district, not just one night, but throughout the year. Then we're moving on the year 2. We continue with the same initiatives, but from what we saw the first year for K through 8, we'll see happening at the high school level. So we'll continue with the 9 through 12, where our students will be leading other families and other students, welcoming in the process of adapting to the new school, to the new district, and continue providing professional development and revising those opportunities for parental engagement. At the same time, when we hit the year 3, we looking at an alignment K through 12 on those initiatives. We saw that kids are having a little bit of a difficult time transitioning during those key years, and also for new families that are coming to the district. So this will be a great way to encourage families and students to continue being focused at the same time they feel welcome and valued in the district. And we also have involved a lot of team members, including, administration, counselors, and everyone in the area of student supports. The last area that I like to focus on will be the student academic and enrichment opportunities. Year 1, we will continue providing professional development in the area of academics, as far as personalization, competency-based learning and differentiation for teachers and paraprofessionals. And we also will review the student selection process and getting involved the staff more into the activities after the school, the summer programming, academic and enrichment opportunities that they sometimes kids do not participate. Again, the data shows that we have students that are not taking advantage of what the school district is offering currently. For the K through 8 core subject areas, we will begin an exploration of the curriculum, the literature, the anthologies, teacher editions, and supplemental readings that match what our students' population reflect, and they should be learning according to the grade level. And we're looking at the K through 5 student grouping. How are we going to be intentionally grouping our students to their academics and make sure that they work up to the full potential? And reviewing what are some of the prerequisites for students that are going to be entering for AP and honors courses, and so we can see a more representation for minority and lowest socioeconomical students. And that's happening in year 1. And like I said, we move in year 2. We'll focus on middle school in that student grouping, and we will focus on the curriculum exploration with the high school. And by year 3, we can see an alignment from K through 12 in this initiative as well. We all responsible to make this happen. I'm counting with all the departments, special education, ESL, middle school, high school, and most than anything, I'm counting on you as board members to continue supporting these initiatives. So I'm excited for that. The next slide is going to show a summary of what I just shared with you, what's happening in each of the 3 areas and what is happening every year, and what are the grade spans that are being involved in each of the initiatives. The last slide is providing with the professional development plan. As I mentioned previously, we do have some professional development in the area of SEL, trauma-informed care, and also culturally responsive instruction. And these are the days that are set up by our district, and I have included some of the topics that allow for modeling, for differentiation, for cultural competency, for SEL, and why it's important to enhance cultural competency to support every student in our classrooms and our rooms. Do you have any questions for me?
I'd have one for you.
Yes.
You had good presentation, by the way. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
You had mentioned just adjustments, reviewing the code of conduct. Did you have anything specific that was top of mind to you that when you look at the code of conduct for discipline that stands out to you as things that would need to be adjusted?
So year 1, it's going to be the review of that code of conduct, because what we look at was that the data of how the referrals and how the infractions and what were the consequences that the students were given. So during the audit, it was found that the minority students and the economically disadvantaged students were given a high number of referrals. Therefore, the plan for year 1 is to look at that code of conduct and make sure that those areas that were found that matches what we're looking to decrease, which is the number of students in that specific group with higher referrals. So I have not looked at that code of conduct. So year one will be the expiration of that and matching with the professional development that will be provided to teachers in the area of relationship building, social, emotional, trauma informed. So then the language will be added year two. So year one will be a year where I'm going to be looking at specifically the language and how are the disproportion and why is it that some students are getting referred more than others.
Okay, good. Just as you guys look at it, I think things I want to make sure we look at too is that we're consistent with discipline, that we treat, as
Exactly.
the code of conduct's in place, that
Mm-hmm.
the same infractions reportings are for everybody.
That's right. Thank you.
Good.
I just have a question. When I
Yes.
reviewed the detailed survey, does this get compared to like national averages of schools who are in comparison to ours? I'm just curious, like.
Are you referring back to the pay survey or which survey?
One that had all like the responses on it. You had a lot of charts, graphs, like there was a lot of things. The one that said, and I'm sorry, I put my computer away, but there was, whether or not we were in compliance where it said yes, no, and in development, that one.
Yes, this actually came from the state for the Pennsylvania Department of Education, and what we do was matching their recommendation with our school district.
Okay, but there were a lot of things that, it wasn't a huge amount of things that we were not doing, well, that said no.
Right.
It was probably two handfuls, not compared to everything that we were doing. It seemed kind of small, but there were some pretty significant things. Are these just things that, do you know is it things that every school district is experiencing, or is it just, I know it was a survey for Whitehall, I get it, but are these things that you see, or
So
that you?
that particular tool was more of a self-assessment
Okay.
type of a tool that was, the responses to that were based on several surveys and focus groups.
I know there was like
meetings,
a family one, the teachers.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
But will this data be compared to because I think you could learn a lot from the school district or
Mr. Tice, I think you have.
the school districts within our area. I'm
Yeah.
just curious.
Some of the metrics that stood out as the most glaring, like for example, discipline or cultural climate, those are national trends. So it doesn't really matter where you look, you're going to see the same thing. So it's not like a Whitehall issue. It is a national thing, but we're still trying to address it here.
Well, of course. I was just, because there were, a couple of things, and there's some of these
And
are
I-
very important.
And I have to say, I've worked in Allentown and Bethlehem, and there are similar statistics. It's similar to this area, at least.
Okay.
Yes.
So these are just, it's a global problem.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ms. Barrios?
Yes.
The training for teachers, the PD days for the SEL trauma-informed relationship building, is that something that all of our educators are required? Is it an optional? How are we?
So we have some professional development that is going to be already embedded in our professional development days that they will be attending, and there will be other ones that the staff can choose which topics they wanted to explore a little bit more.
Okay.
So it's a combination of both.
So if you look at that last slide, the days that are identified as PD, professional
Right.
development days, those are days that's gonna be
Everybody.
one consistent message, all staff.
Okay.
Then the trade day ones would be more of the elective
Elective.
types of activities where people can, if it's an area of deficiency, they can choose to do it, or if it's an area that they're strong in, but they wanna go above and beyond, they can choose.
Do we have a way built into this then within your 3 years to kind of take a look and see, our teachers are?
So the plan is after the professional development is given to provide them a post survey with relevant questions and give them the opportunity to staff to reflect on how was it and what else they need from us. And based on that, we'll plan for the second year. So because professional development could be tailored depending on what they're doing on their own time, besides what we offer, then the second year will be rolled out as soon as we get the feedback from the educators, from the
I think,
teachers.
Mrs.
Yes.
Cromer, you wanna know, all right, is this working, or what's the impact?
Right,
in the classroom?
right.
And
Are teachers buying in?
Right.
I mean, if we're having
Definitely.
professional development and it's not carrying through.
This
Right.
is a part of our process. So the educational equity policy requires us to continually assess, all of these practices, and on an annual basis, as we are doing today, provide an update to the board. So our hope is with all professional development, but, and all of these different programs, we constantly have surveys. We evaluate the effectiveness of our programs. We have our classroom walkthroughs, our formal observations, our PLCs. It's all information that is going to provide us with useful data to make decisions on, all right, this part of the action plan is working.
Right.
This part needs to be revised. This part needs to be scrapped, whatever it might be. And on an annual basis, provide that update to you all, typically in the spring at about this time of year.
But you'll also have real data every year.
Yeah.
There's
Right.
real data to support who's being disciplined, who's in these courses, and all the things that she addressed.
We are not short on data when it comes to all of this, this information.
We'll
whether it be
continue
qualitative or quantitative.
monitoring, yes.
Does that include the counselors as well, the guidance counselors?
Yes.
Part of that professional development?
Yes,
Yeah, because I think they would be a huge part in identifying some of those.
that's true.
As
Yeah,
well as our
Concerns, for sure.
paraprofessionals. as well as our
paraprofessionals.
School bus drivers, our cafeteria workers, we're all in contact with students, and we all need the same message and the same support to support our students.
Yeah. Yes.
How are we going to identify the students that, not in AP courses, but should be in AP? What's the program to identify these kids that should be in AP courses, and they're not there? And
So-
I think we've talked about that before, Mrs. Barrios, about that. Not enough of these kids in AP courses, and they probably could be there.
So I think that you're talking about two ways to address the concern. One would be some more short-term strategies, using our school counselors, using our teachers of classes that have students and trying to get them to extend what they're trying to do. But also really, I think what's a key part of this plan is taking a look at our structures and making sure that we don't pigeonhole students from kindergarten on, that they can't ever get to that point. So we need to make sure that we are providing as many students with Tier 1 instruction as possible, and the best Tier 1 instruction as possible, and responding to their needs so that they can be enriching, remediating in the general classroom as much as possible, and then provided with as many opportunities from grades 6 through 12 after they leave that K-5 program.
So I'm sorry,
I'm done.
you're good? Okay. I was going to add to that, for instance, just to give you an example, we look at the minorities and the economically disadvantaged students, but also by looking at the categories for an ESL student, an English as a second language learner. So the maximum that will take them to exit the program will be 6 years. So if that student enter with us in kindergarten by 6 year before or by grade 6, they should not be an ESL student anymore. So we have to track their growth and their performance, and how can we support teachers to support the students to be able to exit the program. So, and then by that, we'll be able to provide them with those opportunities and look at the prerequisites. What do they need to be successful and to be added on those honors and AP courses at the high school level when they get there?
Good. I just have one last question for you, then I'll let you go, I promise.
That's okay.
Just, you
I'm
talked,
here.
you had talked about different assessments, different things, different ways of learning. I just wanted to just clarify, were you recommending different types of exams for students in the same classroom, or just different things in general?
So were you talking about differentiation for the teachers, like the professional development for differentiation with teachers?
No, just you mentioned something about, assessments in classrooms and things like that. I just didn't know if you meant different assessments for different kids in the same classroom, or different ways of evaluating.
So the
students.
assessments can vary depending on the class, depending on the teacher. Will be formative assessments, stay assessments. So when we're looking at providing professional development for teachers to be able to seek out the best formative or summative assessment that they can give into the classroom for the students to show mastery, to show growth. So basically the assessments wouldn't be different from the ones that we're required to take from the state, but we'll be empowering teachers to utilize different assessment and different tools, whether it's like on the go, like an formative assessment, like raise your hands, how many of you understood, or like a summative that they show like maybe a project at the end of a unit. So the teacher will be best to utilize those resources in the classroom, knowing their audience, knowing what the students are capable to demonstrate. based on their talents, based on their academics and their efforts in the classroom.
Sorry, I apologize. I didn't mean to use the word assessment. I just meant like a test. So if you have 25 kids in a class, would they all take the same test that you're recommending? Or would you say 25 kids, maybe 4 might take this version of a test, 18 might take this version, and 3 might take that version?
Right. The test will be tailored to what if the student has an IEP. It's an special instruction that they will be modifications to that test. So everybody will take a test on a certain unit, on a certain topic, but there will be modifications to the test based on if it's an English language proficiency level that the student is able to demonstrate mastery through pictures or through general matching. It depends on their English language levels, or if a student has a special device that they need to use when taking the assessment. So the assessment will be modified based on the student needs.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anybody
Very
else?
much to both of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Will
Have a
this be
good day.
available online anywhere for the community to access?
Yeah, I uploaded everything in the board's doc, so it should be there. Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving to sharing, discussion, other, there are 3 items. Community Services for Children, Pre-K Counts Program. Dr. Steckel, do you want to speak to that? Is that anything,
That's just
it's just a simple agreement?
we currently have the pre-K counts program at the Steckel Elementary, and this is just
I wasn't sure if you had anything to
renewal.
add.
Yeah, at this point in time, it's just a renewal of our existing program.
Similarly, the Lehigh Carbon Community College Dual Enrollment Agreement, that's something that we would keep in place year to year for our students to access dual enrollment courses. And then lastly is the comprehensive plan, which I think is where Dr. Steckel is going to bring that up.
Thank you, Mr. Schiffert. Very excited today to present to you the comprehensive plan for the 22-23 school year through the 24-25 school year. Bless you.
Thank you, bless you.
This comprehensive plan ties into a long-term vision that we have for the school district for the year 2030. Our first 3 goals for the next 3 years talk about campus consistency, profile of a graduate, and comprehensive professional learning. But we're leading into preparation for making sure that we have the best K-5 program that provides interventions and supports and the best core instruction possible for our students in our 3 elementary schools. We're looking at possibly being more standards-based or shifting to standards-based grading and reporting, making sure that our classrooms are ahead of the curve and are future-ready, prepared for anything that could be coming down the road from our economy, and then expanding our pre-K opportunities, trying to get, with our facilities being the way they are and continued opportunities to grow on our campus, potentially getting more and more 4-year-olds on campus and getting everybody ready for kindergarten and at least as close to on the same level as possible. But ultimately, our long-term goal is college and career-ready graduates. So all of these initiatives, whether it be our short-term 1-year goals, our comprehensive planning goals, or our long-term vision for the district, lead to the best citizens that we can produce here in the Whitehall-Coplay School District. So when you look at our 2030 vision, we have several goals here. One being to revise assessment, grading, and reporting to ensure that students and families understand their progress and are able to identify their own learning. So that's talking about standards-based grading and reporting, really communicating to our families what our students are able to know and do. As I mentioned, designing and implementing future-ready classrooms, implementing a K-5 comprehensive MTSS structure that remediates students' needs and enriches students' growth, making sure that we have the most students in our general education classrooms, provided the best core instruction possible, and then when needed, provided the opportunity to remediate, or when appropriate, enriching that learning and extending their learning. So looking then to college and career-ready graduates, having that 6 to 12 continuum of educational opportunities, again, remediating student needs, enriching student growth, so that no matter what, when they graduate after 12th grade, everybody has the same core skills and abilities regardless of their post-secondary pathway. And then looking to, as I mentioned, implement universal pre-K programs for all 4-year-olds in the Whitehall-Coplay School District. These are all of our long-term vision plans, okay? These are the things that we want to see happen by the year 2030, and annually assess if this is the right direction that we want to head in. In order to get there, we've got some foundational goals that the board has already approved, and specifically pandemic recovery. In July, we're going to come back with our year 2 pandemic recovery plan, making sure that we're going to show you some of the learning loss that we've been able to the gap that we've been able to bridge. We had a very successful year this year. We're going to show you some of that progress, but we're also going to talk about some of the things that we need to continue to do or maybe change direction with those plans. School safety, always a goal, always going to be a district goal, always going to be something that we are evaluating, revising, and improving upon. Equity, inclusion, and belonging. Ms. Barrios, Mr. Tice just presented our plans for the next 3 years. We have to implement those plans, so year 1 will be for next year. Modernizing operations to be as efficient as possible and to make sure that we're doing things consistently. We are continuing that process. And with that, policies and procedures, our evaluation of our policies, creating administrative regulations and procedures to make sure that everybody understands what's expected of them. Grading and assessment, we're going to start chipping away at that long-term vision for standards-based grading and reporting and really explore, all right, what is it that we do? What are some other ways to do things? And potentially taking advantage of our single campus setting and incrementally implementing some revised grading and reporting strategies. Really want to take a look at our campus schedule next year and make sure that we're maximizing our time, operating as efficiently, getting the most instructional time out of our days as possible, and then prepping for, a different look on campus with our K-1 building opening in the 24-25 school year. What schedule is going to be best for our traffic patterns and all those different things. And then obviously our capital improvement plan, which is a way for us to make sure that we are good stewards of our tax dollars and keeping our campus updated and looking good, operating well, and operating efficiently. Those goals lead into our comprehensive plan. So our long-term vision and our short-term goals are all interconnected. So the comprehensive planning process started at the beginning of this school year. We conducted some needs assessments, sent out some surveys. We did a lot of internal meetings based on survey feedback, and then really prepped for some committee work where we had a committee of parents, board members, support staff, cabinet members, principals and administrators, teachers, community members. We had representation from Lehigh Career and Technical Institute. But in the end, we had over 50 people involved in the comprehensive planning process, and it was great to see not only some diverse opinions, diverse perspectives of the district, but it was neat to see how all of those varying viewpoints really came quickly into 3 very specific goals for the district. So we set those goals, and then we took time. We had monthly meetings starting in the fall and ending in April, where we went through the goal-setting process. Then we split up into smaller committees, and we action planned for those goals. And in the end, we also had to do some other state-required reports, such as our induction plan, professional development plan, student services plan. So really, at the end of July, we've got all of our plans taken care of for the state for the next few years at least. That being said, also the special education plan that was approved tonight is also something that works hand in hand with our comprehensive plan. So in the end, we identified 3 main goals for the comprehensive plan, and they're clearly tied to our district vision for the next 10 years. The first one being to develop, market, and integrate a profile of a graduate that clearly defines what it is that we expect our students to do and be college and career ready. The second one being to empower and engage all staff by designing and delivering job-embedded, thorough, and timely professional learning opportunities that are based on district goals and the needs of our community. I think tonight you were presented with some examples of that. Mr. Stauffer, Mrs. Snyder, Mrs. Arifai, at a recent board meeting, presented information about our induction and mentorship program. Yet another example of this type of, professional learning that needs to occur. And then capitalizing on our single campus setting by establishing consistency in communication, procedures, and programs. So I want to dive into each one just a little bit and highlight the next 3 years of what we're trying to do with each goal. With the profile of a graduate, in year one, we will develop a unified vision of the outcomes of the Whitehall-Coplay School District by creating a profile of a graduate. So we will assemble a team of people, including local business owners, board members, parents, the same type of comprehensive planning type of committee. We'll get together and develop that vision. A profile of a graduate is typically like a one-page visual that identifies what it means to be a Whitehall Zephyr graduate. And it clearly identifies key competencies, not necessarily content skills, but what it is that you're able to do regardless of your pathway in your career. So no matter what you want to do after your senior year, everybody has certain skills and traits that they need to exhibit, and we want to clearly identify that. And then in year two, effectively communicate and promote that profile of a graduate. So market it well. Get it out there to as many people as possible. Post it in every classroom. So we have a plan to effectively communicate that, but then where the rubber meets the road is in year three, and we're gonna have to plan for this probably the whole time, but integrating that profile of a graduate into what we do on a daily basis. So our curriculum, our course plans, our unit plans, and our lessons. So making sure that if resiliency is something that we feel a Whitehall graduate needs to have, how are we integrating that into our lessons, into what we do on a daily basis? So we're not just teaching the skills or the knowledge of the coursework, but we're teaching the skills that students need when they exit our halls. So that's the profile of a graduate over the next 3 years. But again, that ties to where we want to be in 2030 with having those college and career-ready graduates. Professional learning, we are implementing personalized professional learning through the Frontline Professional Growth platform for all staff. Mr. Stauffer and his team have already rolled that out. The curriculum department has designed specific activities over the summer. Tomorrow would be an example, but really being able to individualize those opportunities for our staff and make it pretty seamless when it comes to enrolling in coursework within the district, and then understanding tracking and seeing where you're at. But going back to some questions we had about effectiveness, this suite also provides us with the opportunity for every activity that somebody does, there's a post-assessment from the participant, and you get some feedback on the effectiveness of the program and then how they plan to implement it. Developing a new support staff onboarding and induction program or course. I mentioned this a few weeks ago, but we are rebooting our induction program, we are rebooting our mentor program, but that's for teachers. And we need to do the same thing for our support staff to make sure that they have a dedicated individual that they can go to with questions about just being a new staff member, but also having some consistent messaging and training on what it is that we do here. We want to make sure that they're getting the right answer from the right people, and we have that consistent onboarding process in place for our support staff as well as our teaching staff. And then finally, continually redesigning the differentiated supervision model for our teaching staff, making sure that when you go back to this goal, job embedded is a key descriptor for our professional learning program. We want to make sure that we provide opportunities for people to work together to create new ideas, create new lessons, create new products, and improve their craft through those job-embedded opportunities. So the board has already provided some opportunities for this in the form of time and rethinking how we offer professional learning. We have the 3 trade days next year that are going to expand so many opportunities for our staff as far as creating those opportunities for job-embedded professional learning. So we're very excited about this, and we're seeing the change already with our professional learning system. Finally, campus consistency. One of the strengths of the district that everybody talks about is our single campus setting, and in my short term here, I've seen that certainly as an asset to our students and staff. We want to make sure, though, that we capitalize on that single campus setting, and we're consistent with what we do. We're all here on one campus, but we need to make sure that we're operating as one system. Each building has its own personality, has its own strengths, but certain core things need to be consistent. Those include communication and programs and the platforms through which we operate. So we're going to create, implement, and monitor a communication matrix. This communication matrix will identify all of the ways that we communicate, both internally and externally, and ensure that we're doing the right things consistently through all of our schools. So if we're communicating, if teachers are communicating to parents, we need to make sure that parents have pretty much one platform through which they can expect communication from their teachers. We need to make sure that that platform is also accessible, ADA compliant, and translates to the many languages that our families speak. So we're going to take a look at all those different ways that we communicate, whether it be social media, website, email, written letters, and from the central administration to the building administration to the teaching staff to parents, whatever it might be, trying to make sure that we're doing the most efficient, consistent communication methods. And then creating and communicating administrative regulations for all relevant policies. We need to have some more clearly delineated ways of operation, okay, how we do things here in the school district. So we're working as an administrative team. Mr. Schiffert and I met today, Mrs. Maselli and all the school nurses. We met today and we talked about key specific, operational procedures that we need to outline for AEDs and use of inhalers, and really it's the step-by-step instructions to make sure that we're doing things right and then consistently across the campus. So we're getting everybody involved that needs to get involved, and we're really writing the rules of the game when it comes to being an employee here in the school district. So again, just going back, campus consistency, job-embedded, comprehensive professional learning, and then developing that profile of a graduate. All of these are tied to our mission. All of these are tied to our vision for the school district. So the next steps for this would be the comprehensive plan is currently posted online. Mr. Stauffer posted it today. It'll be online up until our July 25th board meeting. We have a copy posted at the district administration office. We will have a copy posted at the public library, and then that's available for public review. Any kind of comments can come to me for review. And then we're looking for formal approval from the board at the July 25th, 2022 board meeting. Are there any questions from the board? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Steckel. It's very exciting to hear you speak about the plan and where our district is headed. And with that, I will move for an adjournment, and we will move everything to the next board meeting for approval.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schiffert.
Thank you.
And that concludes our committee meetings today. Thank you for all attending. Have a nice evening.
Halftime.
Good job.